Hi, I'm Claire Carter. I'm 32. I was the reliable one, the calm one, the one who made things easier so they could shine. When I got engaged, I thought they'd be happy. Instead, they gave my wedding date to my sister, my venue, my ring design, my fiancé, and they thought I'd smile through it all, like I always did. But this time, I didn't smile. I took notes, and I made sure when the truth came out, they'd be the ones performing. Under lights, they couldn't. If you've ever been replaced in your own story, sidelined with a smile, or silenced to keep the peace, drop A in the comments. Hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who's done staying quiet. Because the best revenge is telling the truth and letting it echo. They said the wedding was about love, but somehow, my love story became a family PR move. The scent of cinnamon and roasted turkey hung thick in the air, weaving through polished wood and flickering candles like a veil meant to distract. I sat at the long oak table that had seen 2 decades of Carter family holidays, feeling like an imposter at a theater production that didn't have room for ad-libs. It was Thanksgiving weekend, and my childhood home in Connecticut was dressed to impress. Floral centerpieces, fine china, jazz humming under the clink of silverware. My mother Janet had orchestrated it all with her usual precision, down to the crispness of the linen napkins. My father Thomas, ever the showman, was swirling his wine like he gave a damn about its notes of blackberry and oak. Across from me sat Sophie, glowing, golden Sophie, with that tilt of her chin that said she knew she was the favorite and never needed to apologize for it. I cleared my throat. Ethan and I have some news. The clatter of utensils paused. All eyes turned to me. Ethan shifted slightly in his seat beside me, his smile half-formed, like a draft that hadn't been approved. We're engaged. A beat of silence. Then my mother's painted smile widened a notch. How wonderful, darling. My father nodded. Congratulations. When did this happen? Ethan answered before I could. Last weekend. We were in Charleston. Sophie raised an eyebrow. Did you do the kneeling thing? Ring in the wine glass? Or was it a let's make this official kind of vibe? Very romantic. I replied evenly. It was just us, no theatrics. She smirked. Classic Claire. That stung more than it should have. I glanced at Ethan, hoping for a squeeze of the hand, a reassuring smile. Something. But he had retreated into that quiet place he went to when things got too personal. His fingers toyed with the stem of his glass. No eye contact. Just like the last time I brought up looking at wedding venues. Janet clapped once. We'll have to find a weekend to celebrate. Something elegant, tasteful. Maybe at the club. Thomas murmured, let's not rush into logistics. We've barely announced, I said, my voice tighter than I meant. I didn't bring it up for spreadsheets and seating charts. I wanted to share good news. Sophie leaned forward, eyes gleaming. Well, finally you beat me to something. The room shifted, subtly but unmistakably. The smile on her lips said kidding, but the tone in her voice whispered not really. I looked at Ethan again. Still nothing. After dinner, the house thinned out as Sophie left to meet some friends, and Janet busied herself rearranging the already symmetrical mantel. Ethan mumbled about checking work emails and disappeared into the guest room. I wandered the halls, aimless, unsettled, my heels muted against the old runner rug that lined the floor. The hallway near my father's study glowed dimly from a lamp left on, casting long shadows and soft murmurs through the cracked door. I'm just saying. My father's voice. Ethan has a future. Presence. And he gets along so easily with Sophie. It's a shame they never dated seriously. Janet's sigh followed. Claire is reliable, but there's no spark, and this wedding could be more than just a formality. It could be a real opportunity. Exactly. Ethan might be a better match for Sophie in the long run. I froze. The hallway was cold all of a sudden, or maybe I was. My breath caught in my throat as if sound had turned to glass inside me. I took a step back, gently enough not to creak the floorboard, but quickly enough to disappear before the conversation turned crueler. My hand gripped the stair rail. My vision blurred. Ethan. Sophie. My parents. This wasn't just favoritism. This was strategy, positioning, optics. I climbed the stairs like a ghost, the taste of cranberry sauce suddenly bitter on my tongue. Ethan was lying on the bed, scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up. I didn't say anything. I lay beside him without a word, staring at the ceiling that still had the glow-in-the-dark stars from when Sophie and I shared this room. Back when we were kids. Back when things were simpler. Or maybe I was just too naive to see the edges forming. That night, something broke. But I didn't know yet. That break would be a clean cut. And they were already sharpening the blade. I didn't give up my wedding date. I was told, gently, graciously, and with wine, that I should. The air was thinner on the rooftop. Not from altitude, but from atmosphere. Glittering lights of Manhattan below tried to compete with the candlelit elegance of the restaurant above, but the skyline couldn't distract from the subtle theater being staged at the Carter family's latest photo op, disguised as a dinner. I sat across from Sophie, who was practically glowing under the amber lights, one manicured hand perched just so on Ryan's arm, the other displaying a ring that looked unnervingly familiar. Platinum. Halo setting. Oval diamond. I had once saved that exact image to my future Pinterest board. "You're engaged," I said. It wasn't a question. Sophie beamed. "Aren't you thrilled?" I didn't answer. I didn't trust myself to. Naomi's hand grazed mine under the table. She was the only reason I hadn't left already. Her gaze flicked from Sophie to Ryan, then to my parents, and finally to Ethan, whose casual indifference was louder than anything he could have said. "And," Sophie continued, sipping her wine like she was on stage, "we've set the date, June 15th, the plaza rooftop, sunset vows. Just like we always dreamed, right, Claire?" I blinked. June 15th, the date Ethan and I had picked. The plaza, the venue I had scouted, toured, and reserved after weeks of back and forth. The deposit I'd placed. The same panoramic view. The same vision. My mother chimed in, ever the PR rep in pearls. "It made sense, darling. The date was available and you hadn't finalized anything." "I signed the contract," I said softly. Thomas waved his hand. "We had it transferred. There's always room for adjustment." "Besides," Ethan added, looking at his phone without flinching, "Sophie's wedding aligns better with Dad's quarter-end dinner. Timing's everything." My throat burned. I picked up my glass, not to toast, just to have something to hold on to. My knuckles turned white. Sophie leaned in with mock concern. "You're not upset, are you? I mean, you always said the date was just symbolic. You're the practical one, remember?" Naomi straightened in her chair. "Symbolic doesn't mean disposable." Janet laughed, light as chiffon. "Let's not make this dramatic. It's just a wedding date." Just a wedding date. Just my venue. Just my ring design. Just everything I'd quietly dreamed about, handed over like a family heirloom re-gifted without asking. As dessert arrived, some delicate spun sugar monstrosity no one touched, Naomi tugged at my arm and pulled me toward the edge of the terrace. Her voice was low, sharp. "Are you going to let them edit you out of your own story?" I looked out at the lights of the city. My city. My career. My choices. My name on the contract. And now, my silence apparently was consent. "I don't know what I'm going to do," I said. "You don't have to know yet," she replied, "but you can start by not smiling while they gut you." Back at the table, the toasts had begun. Thomas raised his glass. Janet dabbed at her eyes as if she were overwhelmed with joy. Sophie stood and performed her happiness like it was a campaign speech. I stood too. The clinking ceased. "To Sophie and Ryan," I said, voice steady despite the tremble underneath. "For making June 15th the most important day of my life, happening to someone else." Silence. Then a few polite chuckles. Sophie tilted her head, unsure if it was a joke or not. Ethan didn't look up. Naomi was already watching me, eyes sharp as glass. That night, I didn't cry. I researched prenups and domain transfers instead. The best way to hunt liars? Let them feel safe while they lie. My apartment in Boston had never felt this quiet before. Not even during finals week, when the only sound was the buzz of my desk lamp and the soft clink of ceramic as I drank coffee like it was survival. Now, the silence hummed differently. It wasn't empty. It was focused. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I opened my laptop. The glare from the screen caught the edges of my cheekbones in the darkened room. Beside me, Naomi sat curled on the couch, hoodie pulled tight, eyes scanning spreadsheets like she was born for espionage. "Look at this," she muttered, pulling up a file I didn't recognize. First Horizon Bank, a name I barely remembered Ethan mentioning once. Naomi had interned there before graduate school. Old client database. I shouldn't still have this access, but here we are. On the screen, a joint account. Ethan Collins and Michael Petrovich. The same Michael Naomi saw cozying up to Sophie during the rooftop dinner. The transaction history wasn't long, but the dates lined up too well. 1 week before Sophie's engagement announcement, a large deposit marked Bridgewell Ventures. I stared. Ethan's last name isn't Collins. Naomi froze. What? He told me his family was from Vermont, but that's not true. I found his old resume on LinkedIn months ago before he asked me to take it down. It said Ethan Richard. She cross-referenced the records. Yup, that's him. And Petrovich? Not just a partner. He was once sued for IP theft, settled out of court. My lungs felt tight. Not from grief, from calculation. I opened a new spreadsheet, labeled it Truth, 2 columns. What they told me, what I found. By 3 a.m., it had 23 entries. The next morning, I called Sophie. Voice cheerful, polite. "I want to help. With the wedding. I feel awful about how distant I've been." "Oh my God, yes," she chirped. "I was worried you'd hold a grudge. This means everything." Of course it did. We arranged to meet over coffee. I brought a color-coded binder, purely for appearances, and asked her to share any files she and Ryan had prepped for the wedding site, branding materials, and social media teasers. It's like launching a startup, right? I laughed. She nodded eagerly and gave me full Dropbox access. That night, Naomi and I opened the folder. There it was, the deck I had poured hours into. Strategy, investor segmentation, platform features, all from the fintech startup Ethan and I had pitched over wine and Thai takeout a year ago. Identical. Except now it bore Ryan's logo and Sophie's face in the founder spotlight. I didn't blink. I backed it all up, then encrypted a second copy and uploaded it to a drive Naomi helped me password protect with phrases only I would remember, just in case. I clicked through a folder labeled Media Training. Among the files, a voice memo. Ethan's voice. Casual, too casual. "She's too reactive," he said. "Claire's smart, but Sophie's better for optics. A better public face." My lips barely moved, but the words were steel. And I built the whole damn thing. I didn't cry. I documented a timeline. I opened a legal folder. I logged their names, aliases, transactions. Then I smiled. They didn't just take my date. They took my work, my name, and thought I'd stay quiet. I smiled. They had no idea what silence was for. The best apologies are confessions you don't know you're making. Sophie's loft smelled like white peonies and imported figs, a mix curated to whisper, "I live better than you." It was pristine, open plan, flooded with soft light, and staged with the kind of designer touches that suggested neither comfort nor accidents were welcome. I walked in with a folder in one hand and a practiced smile in the other. Sophie poured us rosé like it was sacred, not currency. "You look well-rested," she said, with a hint too much surprise. "I thought you'd still be processing." "I was," I replied, settling onto her velvet couch. But then I realized Maybe it's time to move on, to heal. She beamed, radiant and smug. That's exactly the energy I want at my wedding. Right, I said, reaching into my folder. I found some notes from the planner Ethan and I were using. Vendor timelines, contingency plans. It might help. Sophie's eyes flicked down. Wow, this is generous. I thought you were angry. I was. I sipped the rosé. But what good is resentment? What good indeed? While she scanned the documents, I kept talking, lightly. You guys ever think of reaching out to the Patterson Rhodes firm? They loved our proposal, especially the pitch deck Ethan helped with. She stiffened, barely, then looked up. Patterson Rhodes? I nodded, eyes wide with false innocence. Yeah, big investors. They said they'd fund the platform as long as the concept stayed strong. Her laugh came too fast. Oh, well, I'm sure someone reached out. You know how Ryan networks. It's all a blur now. Right. Downstairs, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A silent alert Naomi had programmed for me. I excused myself to the bathroom and checked it quickly. Naomi. Bingo. Ethan sent your deck to Michael's Bridgewell email on June 14th. Subject line. Ready for rebranding. She won't know. My breath caught. Naomi. Conted. Also, your doc's metadata. Edited and backdated. June timestamp is fake. File structure confirms it was yours first. In the mirror, I adjusted my lipstick and my mask. Back at the table, I let Sophie fill the air with wedding babble. Napkin textures, rehearsal dinner guest lists, who to seat near Dad. Then she tilted her head, letting something slip. Dad said I had to move fast. No one backs the second best. Second best. My fingers curled lightly around the base of the wine glass. Second best? I asked. She blinked. Just something he said. Like, get ahead before someone else does. Before me, you mean? She faltered. I didn't say that. No, I said softly. But you didn't have to. There it was. The crack in her voice, the hesitation in her posture. Sophie had always been many things. Charming, loud, clever in a borrowed way. But she'd never been careful. And now she was standing in the center of a web she thought she'd spun, not realizing I had mapped every thread. I packed up the folder with a smile. Thanks for the rosé. This helped more than you know. That night, Naomi called from her apartment, her voice crisp. I sent the file package to a contact, Lisa Harrington, FBI Cyber Division. She says if there's wire fraud, they want in. And Claire, this isn't just about stolen IP anymore. It's coordinated fraud. Federal. My laptop screen blinked back at me. One folder open. Label, buried alive. Inside it, every lie they'd built on my silence. They didn't just bury me. They planted their future on my grave. But I'm still breathing. They rehearsed the perfect night. I rehearsed the reveal. The Armitage estate glittered like a dream. Or rather, the dream Sophie had always wanted. Old money elegance polished with modern spectacle. Candlelight danced across the gold-rimmed glassware. A string quartet played something delicate in the background. And every guest was impeccably dressed, drunk on champagne and proximity to the Carters. I stood at the edge of it all, flawless in a navy satin gown, posture poised, expression composed. Beneath the surface, my blood pulsed in time with my new mantra. Make it public. Make it legal. Make it permanent. Naomi stood near the back, a clutch in her hand and a wire beneath her neckline. Lisa Harrington, in a slate-gray dress and low heels, was seated quietly near the bar, sipping water, her eyes tracking everything. Sophie floated across the room in white, a soft, glimmering rehearsal gown that mimicked a wedding dress a bit too much. Ethan stood beside her, hand on her back, speaking low to investors and family friends. They looked like perfection personified. And perfection begged for disruption. After the third course, some delicate sea bass concoction with a name no one pronounced right, the host called for toasts. Sophie grinned and gestured to me, voice high with faux sisterly affection. Claire's the best speaker in the family. Come on, you know you want to. I stepped forward, lifted my glass, and began. I've always believed stories matter. Not just the ones we tell the world, but the ones we're forced to live through. Soft laughter. I smiled back, warm and unthreatening. But stories can be rewritten, even stolen. Tonight I'd like to share one. Not to entertain, but to correct. I set the glass down. My hands didn't shake. A little over a year ago, I co-developed a fintech pitch deck. Ethan helped structure the data. That same deck, line by line, slide by slide, was submitted 6 months ago under Sophie and Ryan's names to Bridgewell Ventures. The metadata was backdated. The author field was edited. The financial projections, mine. The UX mockups, mine. The investor list, curated by me. Chairs shifted. Sophie laughed, thin and forced. Wait, is this a joke? Are we doing a skit or… No, I said calmly. But wire fraud isn't a joke either. Lisa gave a subtle nod. Naomi stepped forward and placed a sleek black flash drive on the head table. In this drive, Naomi said clearly, you'll find email transfers, bank records, metadata logs, and audio evidence, including one particular voice memo. I pulled out my phone, pressed play. Ethan's voice filled the room. She's smart, but not essential. Claire's emotional. She won't even check the Dropbox. Murmurs rose. Someone stood to leave. Janet Carter, pale and frozen, clutched Thomas's arm. He said nothing, just stared. Lisa approached the table, badge now discreetly visible. Ethan Richard, you're requested for immediate questioning by federal agents. Please come with us. He gaped. Are you serious? Another voice cut in. One of the men from the back of the room. We are. 2 agents moved in. Ethan turned to Sophie, stunned. You said… She shrank back. I said you'd be fine, she whispered, but her eyes darted, calculating. Lisa turned to Sophie. You're listed as a beneficiary in several filings. We'd like a word. As the agents moved forward, Ryan quietly slipped out the side door. No one stopped him. No one even noticed. Except me. Because I'd seen the paperwork. He was already being investigated for securities violations. He knew the clock had run out. I smoothed the front of my dress, turned to the guests, and said simply, "Thank you for listening." Then I walked out, heels tapping against marble, past photographers, waitstaff, guests whose mouths were still slightly open. They had the spotlight. I gave them the mic. Now they'll perform for a judge. They say justice is cold, but I felt warm walking away. Snow had melted into the edges of the stone walkways outside the Boston Public Library, leaving behind wet streaks and the soft scent of thawed earth. Inside, beneath the grand dome of Bates Hall, sunlight filtered in like a benediction. The tables had been cleared, the room rearranged. Not for spectacle, not for status, but for something simpler. Something real. 18 guests, no photographers, no press, just us. Liam stood near the front, his tie slightly askew in that way that made him charming, not careless. His eyes met mine the moment I stepped into the room. There was no grand entrance, no orchestra swell, just steady breath, steady ground. After a year like mine, that was all the magic I needed. 3 months had passed since the Armitage. Ethan had been indicted on multiple counts of wire fraud. Sophie cut a deal. Small-time cooperation for immunity. Michael vanished offshore. The Carters issued a statement about being deeply misled and then went silent. I didn't chase them down. I didn't need closure. I'd already closed the door. Some people rebuild. Others start new. I chose both. Naomi stood beside me as my maid of honor, her black silk jumpsuit defying every convention with elegance. She'd helped me more than anyone, not just in the courtroom filings or the evidence trail, but in the quiet days afterward, when I was still learning how to wake up without waiting for betrayal. During her toast, she lifted her glass and said, Claire taught me something no business school ever could: that silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. There were tears in her eyes. I didn't expect that. I almost let one fall, too. But instead, I smiled. Later, as guests milled about with small bites and strong coffee, Liam found me near the fireplace in the adjoining room. I was holding a letter. No return address. No name. Just my first name in Sophie's handwriting, etched across the envelope in careful loops. I didn't open it. I held it for a moment, then dropped it into the fire. The paper curled, browned, and disappeared. Liam's hand found mine. "You okay?" I nodded. Better than okay. We walked back under the dome. There were no rose petals or floating veils, no pageantry, just quiet footsteps in a hush that came not from reverence, but respect. And then we kissed. No photographers, no one else's story, just mine. Later that evening, when the last guest had left and the dome was lit only by moonlight, I sat in my study. A simple desk, a wooden drawer, and one black-bound journal. I wrote one final entry, a line that had lived inside me for too long. They said the wedding was about love. But somehow, my love story became a family PR move. And now, no more edits. I closed the journal, locked it away. For the first time in a year, I wasn't waiting for anything to fall apart. I was walking into something I built, and no one else could steal. They said the wedding was about love, but my story was never about love alone. It was about being rewritten, replaced, and finally erased in favor of a shinier version of myself they thought they could sculpt. When Sophie announced her wedding on my date, at my venue, with the man I once planned a life with, something inside me didn't just break. It reconfigured. I didn't cry that night. I opened a blank spreadsheet. While they celebrated, I collected. While they posed, I documented. I poured every ounce of my heartbreak into timelines and folders, aligning pain with proof. It wasn't revenge I wanted. Not really. It was acknowledgement. A moment when the world would stop pretending that I was imagining it. That the theft, of credit, of affection, of dignity, was just a misunderstanding. They thought my silence was submission, but it was preparation. It turns out the best way to dismantle a lie is not to shout over it. It's to let it echo in a room full of people who finally hear it for what it is. So I did. At their perfect rehearsal dinner with wine glasses midair and smiles frozen in place, I told the story they didn't think I'd dare say aloud. I gave them the script. Emails, pitch decks, audio recordings. I didn't even need to raise my voice. The facts did the screaming for me. And when the agent stood up, quiet, professional, and asked Ethan to follow them out, I didn't watch him go. I looked at Sophie instead. Her face was caught somewhere between fury and disbelief, and I felt nothing. No triumph. No grief. Just release. 3 months later, I stood beneath the dome of the Boston Public Library, with someone who never needed to eclipse me to feel seen. There were no photographers, no press, just the quiet truth that I'd built something of my own, not to show them, but to free myself. Sophie sent a letter. I didn't open it. Not out of spite, but because I didn't need to know what it said. Some apologies only arrived to soothe the guilty, not heal the hurt. I chose peace over permission. Now, I spend my mornings mentoring women who've been told to sit down, smile, and stay quiet. I tell them, take notes, take screenshots, take your time. The world may try to overwrite your narrative, but that doesn't mean they own the story. Reflection and lesson, still in first person. Justice didn't come like a thunderclap. It came in the steady flick of a lighter, burning away the pages they wrote over me. I didn't need to destroy them. They did that themselves, the moment they assumed I wouldn't fight back with facts. And I've learned, when someone tries to silence you, it's because they're terrified of what your voice could unravel. Like frost on glass, deception fades when you let the light in. If this story made something in you go quiet, and then stand up stronger. Hit like, subscribe, share it with someone who needs to remember. You don't owe them grace. You owe yourself closure.